أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولكل وجه هو موليها فاستبقوا الخيرات أينما تكونوا يأتي بكم الله جميعا إن الله على كل شيء قدير صدق الله العظيم.
I seek refuge in Allah from the other shaitan. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. To each is a goal to which Allah turns him. Then strive together as in a race towards all that is good. Wheresoever they are, Allah will bring it together. For Allah hates power of all things. Jazakallah.
The Malik Chiragh Challenge Cup is awarded each year to the best English speaker in H.C. College, in a context where the most fervent of our speakers unite. So, introducing your chairs for this particular event. My name is Abdul Rahim Hamid of Class H2. I serve as the Prefect of H.C. College as well as the President of the Debating Society as well as a member of the National Debate Team. Over to you, sir.
My name is Zain Akhtar. I am also in H2. I am also serving as the chair this afternoon. Additionally, I am the General Secretary of the Dramatic Society and one of the college prefects this year. We are honored that our distinguished old boys have joined us this afternoon to judge this event. I would first like to introduce our guest judges, Mr. Rafi Alam, Mr. Rahman Hamid, and Dr. Murray Salik. Mr. Rafi is an environmental lawyer, activist, and advocate of the high courts. He co-founded Salim Alam & Co., a firm that specializes in energy, water, and natural resources and urban infrastructure sectors. He has also served as the chairman of the board of two public sector utilities, the Lahore Electric Supply Company and the Lahore Waste Management Company. Thank you for joining us.
Rahman Hamid is the CEO of the American School of International Academics. He has had the honor to work in different capacities in the Pakistani government as Director General of the Board of Investment Punjab, Economic Minister of Pakistan, the Embassy of Pakistan in Japan. Heading the only American school in Pakistan, Mr. Rahman has also started recognized degree programs from the UK in law, business, and IT. Sir, we are honored to have you judge at this event.
Dr. Mumri Salik is an orthopedic surgeon with 20 years of international training and work experience. He has also specialized in joint replacement, arthroscopy, and trauma surgery. Presently, he is a professor of orthopedics at King Edward Medical University and an honorary senior clinical lecturer at St. Bart's and Queen Mary University, London. Thank you for joining us, sir.
We would like to give all of our old boys a round of applause before we begin. We will now move on to the more technical parts of this afternoon. The speakers are fully aware of the judging criteria, but for clarity, let us review the rules and topics of this competition.
So, the topics this afternoon are: first, those who do not move do not notice their chains. Second, to endure is greater than to dare. And third, social impacts of COVID-19 have altered social behavior permanently.
Let's go over the rules of the competition once. First, speeches should be between 3 to 5 minutes, not going below, not going above. Second, paper reading is not allowed in any form, including flashcards. Thirdly, the decision of the judges will be final and cannot be reversed. Fourthly, speakers will be judged on their content, delivery, pronunciation, posture, and eye contact. Fifthly, speakers will be penalized for exceeding the aforementioned time limits. Sixthly, speakers must refrain from using any foul or inappropriate language in their speeches and may not use any sexually explicit terms. For the speakers, the first bell will go after 3 minutes, like so. The second bell will go on the fourth bell, like so. And the final bell for the 5th minute to indicate you should stop your speech will go like so. Now before we begin, we would like to request everybody in the audience to please switch off their mobile phones so that there are no interruptions during this competition.
So we would also firstly like to acknowledge the presence of our headmistress, Madam Amna Kamran, and our deputy headmaster, Dr. Kamran. So a round of applause for them.
We would firstly like to call the first speaker of this competition to the podium, Rafi'a Tawla from C1B House Gym.
Speaker 1, you now.
The topic that is those who do not move from our organizations. For people oblivious of the existence of their chains, the word injustice is a foreign concept. When people are presented their chains as laurels to be pinned on their chests, poor quality of life is no longer inconvenience, but their reality. And when people are oblivious of the existence of their rights, poor healthcare, illiteracy, unaccounted robbery, and harassment do not feel like violations. When people have been raised under slavery by slaves of time, society, and culture, these chains stop feeling discomforting and start feeling like home. When people are ready to die and to kill for the rules set by patriarchy and the barriers set by language and tribal discrimination, these people commit acts of murder, and these acts of murder are no longer matters of shame, but instead become sources of honor. This oppression has become normalized, and whatever is normal is comfortable. And to soothe it with this false sense of normalcy and comfort, these people are numb. These people are numb. How do you expect people to realize their chains? For these people have given up their freedom just to normalize oppression. How do you expect modern awakening from people who got wild and mad and revolutionaries crazy? So yes, honorable judges, surrounded with the lives of helplessness, despair, social norms and dutifulness, these people do and will continue to withstand unimaginable atrocities. They will not dare move. They will not dare gather the courage to stand up and to reconstruct their lives. They will remain victims to circumstances and will lose their lives waiting for a savior, but will not realize that each person is responsible for his own saving. They will not dare think, not move, not notice their chains. They will not move, not notice their chains. Honorable judges, it does not take much to notice our chains. With an awakened conscience and a fair amount of rejection to substandard living, all chains can be noticed and all shackles can be broken. We will have to reflect on the footsteps of our revolution. In the blazing sand of Karbala, will you find the courage of Imam Hussain, who left humanity with a message that even your head is not more important than steadfastness? In the words of Martin Luther King, will you find the shaping to a proud life? You will have to reflect upon the principles of truthfulness set by Socrates and the perseverance of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. In the captivity of life and its flares, will you find that imprisonment is not synonymous to slavery? In a single note of injustice by Mustafa, will you find the courage to reject every form of violence? In the words of the Sharif of Iran, will you find the walkway to a new world, and only in the streets of Hassan Nasser, designated in the walls of Shahi Qila, will you find the West to fight for our own rights. Ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative for us to realize and learn the lessons that our forefathers died teaching us, because only then will we be able to have the courage to move, to notice, and to break our chains. To move, to notice, and to break our chains. Honorable judges and dear audience, it is time for humanity to stop hiding behind these cowardly alternatives. It is time for us to take responsibility of our dreams, to take responsibility of the people around us and of making the society better. Because only when we uphold our honor in ensuring everyone's safety and independence would we be able to achieve true independence. The independence that every man is entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Rakib. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 41 seconds. Before we move on to our next speaker, we would like to introduce the Honorable Principal of our college, Sir Michael Cross. Please give him.
We now call upon Speaker 2 to the podium, Ahmed Arjun Raja, CUD House Secretary.
With the permission of the yeah, the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, to endure is greater than to dare. We would like to finish this quote by William Makepeace Thackeray by ending it with the same quote. Is this not greatness? Is this not greatness? We need to recognize the fact that while millions of people are dying, that millions are suffering, that millions are enduring the pain that we could never assume. Our Palestinian brothers currently fighting under oppression, our Myanmar Muslims fighting under oppression, and they are to endure. And they will endure. Because that is what defines their character. That is what defines their purpose. That is what defines them as a whole. Their endurance in the face of oppression. Their endurance to fight up for what is right. Their endurance to show, to go away from the shackles of oppression, to fight against the glass ceiling. To endure is greater than to dare. This reminds us of one South African farmer who grew up and rotted in a jail only to come out and end apartheid. Nelson Mandela, who stood up against the unruthless apartheid in his nation, to only rot in a jail cell for 20 years. But ladies and gentlemen, it was not his dare that was remembered. It was his endurance. It was his sanity in that small jail cell that wrote books. It was his sanity in that jail cell that wrote poetry, that wrote poems about his greatness. He is now remembered today, one of the great, as those who ended apartheid in South Africa. But we need not remember his riots. We need not remember his changes if it was not for those 20 years in a jail cell, staring at a brick wall, only to endure, only to realize what he could do for humanity, only to stare at a rotting cell do we realize what we can do most for humanity. We need to recognize that humanity can dare, all humans can dare, but the few of us can endure. The few of us can go through the sands of Karbala. The few of us can go through the shell fires of Ramallah. The few of us can go through the sands of Iraq, only to meet with our true greatness. Because all of us in this room can dare, Mr. Speaker, all of us in this room can dare, but only a few of us can endure. Only a few of us can stand up for what is truly right, and only a few of us are willing to face what comes next. To open the door, to jump into the mirror and enter a new world. Because most of us, Mr. Speaker, are ready to dare. We are ready to take up arms. We are ready to rise our voices, but we are not ready to spend those 20 years in a jail cell. We are not ready to spend years under oppression, and we are not ready to be there when it means most. Because, as we all know, the pen is mightier than the sword. Because anybody can come with the sword, and anybody can use the sword to spill another brother's blood. But it is only a special few who can use the ink of the pen to show their endurance and their pain. Palestinian Liberation Authority. Who fought? Who did not even have a house of his own. Instead, it was not only his house, but his office. Who had his bathroom right next to his office. Who had gunshots while during his wedding. Who had to endure the pain of oppression. Who had to go without water for days, without food for days. Making Ramadan only a month for him, making Ramadan a year for his endurance. Because Yasser Arafat will be remembered. He will not be remembered for him standing up to the Israeli oppression. He will be remembered for sitting in that room right next to his bathroom, for signing the documents that said Palestinian independence. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as we repeat one more time, to endure is greater than to dare. Anyone can pick the sword and slit the hand of another mortal, but only a few of us have the courage to pick up the pen and write down what is necessary, and write down the true form of what they suffered. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Imran. The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 2 seconds. We would now like to call upon Speaker 3, Alawal Jamal of Jubilee House, to the podium.
With the permission of the judges. Yeah.
Before I begin, I'd like to give trigger warning. In my speech, I might make some references to incidents which might please if you're not comfortable with sad mentioned incidents, please do that. I'm beginning my speech. I'm speaking on to your is greater than prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes crying is the only way we can talk. Crying is the only way we can talk because our eyes can tell, but our mouth doesn't have the courage to say. Because it's easier for us to accept physical pain. It's easier. It's easy to say, I can't move. It's easy to say, I broke a leg. It's easy to say, I can't speak. But no one has the courage to say, I don't think I can make it. I don't think I can carry on. I don't think I'm good enough. And these are wounds that run deeper and hurt more than anything else in the entire world, and we face them alone. We face them alone. Ladies and gentlemen, how many times have you thought about the person sitting right next to you? How many times have you thought about that lady in the car next to yours when you're going home from school? How many times have you thought about the person you cross every day on the sidewalk, sitting there begging? How many times have you lied when someone asked you, how are you? And that's the fraud of human society, ladies and gentlemen. That's the fraud of human society. That somehow we are some interconnected, unified nation, that somehow man is a social animal. But in the end, you, me, your parents, your brothers, sisters, siblings, family members, all of us will face our demons, all of us will face our problems, all of us will face our nightmares, and we will face them alone. And some people say it's easier to end it right now. It's easier to shoot yourself in the head than to live another day of this brutal existence. It's easier to empty that bottle of pills and just drown away. It's easier to stop existing. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the fact is that you, me, and everybody in this room have told ourselves in our most private, most secretive, most weakest moments that you have something to live for. That you have something driving you every single day. That is real strength. Because you don't know how strong you actually are when the only option you have is being strong. That is real endurance, ladies and gentlemen. Because endurance is does not come from physical capacity. Endurance comes from indomitable will. Because if at the end of every battle, if at the end of every day you can get up and say, look, I made it through that. If at the turn of every corner, if at the crest of every hill, you can say, I can do one more. If at the dusk of every night, at the dawn of every day, you can say, I have one more day to go. Then there is no one stronger than you in the entire world. And this world, ladies and gentlemen, this world is a mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. There are only a few who can get up. Very few can get up. And once you are in that position, saying you are there where you are because of him or her or anybody, you don't do that because cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. You have something to live for. You have will. You have the will to endure. And this life does not get easier. It does not get more convenient. No. You have to get more stronger. You have to get more resilient. At the end of the day, the greatest thing you can do is continue to live and all you want to do was die. The greatest thing you can do is keep going. And if you ever feel as if you don't think that you'll make it that far, think about how far you have come, how many challenges you've faced, how many fears you've overcome. Because in the end, endurance is greater than anything. To die without hostile fortune, to be daunted by no fear, to keep heart when others are hostile, and in the end, forego even ambition. Who can say this is not greatness? Thank you.
We thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 38 seconds. We would now like to call the fourth speaker of the Malik Chiragh to the stage, Zuhair Sami from class C1B, Sikandar. With the permission of the judges.
Really not.
What did Kailash Mohammed Mahatma Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela have in common? They all refused to be prisoners to the systems they were born in. The freedom movements in Pakistan and India and the civil rights movements of apartheid in South Africa became tribute to these men because they recognized that if they accepted things as they were, they would forever be subjugated to the will of others. Their people would forever be treated as inferior beings, belittled, cold, or advancement. Ladies and gentlemen, those who don't move never notice their chains. Do you know what chains are holding you in place? You see, there are distinct moments in our lives that help us understand that we are simple pawns in a game of three-dimensional chess. That no matter how hard we try, we remain puppets in the hands of our master. Today, we sit here as a parental friend, some of the most fortunate people in our society. Yet, even we are thinking about the loans we have to pay off, how to pay for school, university, kids, a car, a house, ways to finance the next big purchase in our consumerism fueled splurges. Despite being the few and the wealthy in this country, where poverty, hunger, and illiteracy have been rampant, even we remain chained to the rhythm. In the looming shadow of neocolonialism, aren't we then changing the mentality of our former oppressors? English remains the language of the elite, and yet it is our field of instruction, a requirement that our oppressors levy on us. Let's think for a second about the consumer culture behind fairness creams and whitening soaps, which foreshadows our obsession with whiteness, the ultimate artifact that was left behind by our colonial rulers. We can't be proud and proud till we rid ourselves of the whitening shadow that hasn't left since 1947. Western ideals have crept into the way we walk, talk, and dress. The truth is, we are chained. We don't see it, but we are chained. Ladies and gentlemen, those who don't move never notice their chains. This speech is not a nudge, but a push, a call for movement. We are special. In this age of unique spread of news and social media, Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi, and now we lead the movements to free the disappointed, we will still be colonized by the British and living as second-class citizens in our own lands. If Nelson Mandela did not march against apartheid, black and white people will still be segregated. Non-white people will still be facing discrimination politically as well as economically in South Africa. The point is, we accept things as they are without questioning the things around us. We're handing away the keys to our freedom. Close to the present day, we see that the protests in the aftermath of the George Floyd's murder in America started a global conversation about racism and gave the Black Lives Movement a major push. What even young people like Greta Thunberg, who at the age of 15 protested for climate change by standing outside the British Parliament and started global school strikes to end carbon emission, and today China's United Nation leaders to take action. Malik our very own hero, an activist for female education in Pakistan, has put the message out to millions, if not more. Our goals ever diverse, and our leaders everywhere. We stand at an important crossroads. Those who don't move never notice their chains. And today, we are breaking free, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
For that speech to hear, the speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 27 seconds.
We would now like to call the fifth speaker of the Malik Chiragh, Bride bin Mazhar of Class H1L of Ghazi House.
I am representing those who do not move, do not notice their changes. As Frederick Douglass has said, I didn't know I was a slave until I found out I couldn't even do the things that I wanted to do. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who is ordered by his master to do as he is told, is he a free man? No, he is a slave who is bound by his shackles to do as he is told to do, a slave who is not allowed to do what he wants to do. But what happens when that slave decides to take a stand? What happens when that slave decides to break his chains? What happens when that slave decides to move? He was once known as a slave, now he is a free man who can sit under the sunlight, a free man who can laugh and love, a free man who can do whatever he wants to do, all because he decided to break his chains, all because he took a stand, all because he moved. It is as Bob Marley has said, it is better to die fighting for freedom than spend all of your days as a prisoner. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who is chained to the bars of a golden cage, to the bars of a golden cage, the cage with all the luxuries of the world, the cage with all the riches of the world. Is that cage better than freedom? Is that cage enough to make that person happy? Or is it just called beautiful imprisonment? Gilded chains that hold one are still chains, although modern society has accepted they thrive in the chains of comfort, convenience, and modern technology. And before we know it, the puppeteers will become the puppets of technology. Everywhere we remain unfree and chained to our technology, whether we passionately affirm it or deny it, but we are delivered to it in the worst possible way when we regard it as something neutral. And this conception makes us utterly blind to the essence of effects of technology. As Christian Louis Lange has said, technology is a useful servant, but a very dangerous master. And not only today, what happened to the Mughal Empire, what happened to the Romans, what happened to the Ottoman Empire? They
They were shackled to the materialistic things. They were shackled to the gold they had conquered, and they were chained to the gifts they received. And over time, those chains became so strong that they found it difficult to move, and they noticed that they were going towards downfall. That's why they did not succeed. What did the British East India Company do? In the name of amenities, in the name of progress, they stagnated what was once our own. This progress, this convenience shackles us to our desires. Hard times create good men. Good men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times. Ladies and gentlemen, what happens to a bird who is born in a cage? Why doesn't it fly out when that cage is open? It's because the bird's wings were chained in that cage for so long that it thinks that the flying is now an illness. The flying is now an illness. This is what we are becoming. We are becoming the birds who won't be able to fly, and eventually we will think that flying is an illness. I would like to end by saying, let us unite together to build towards something strong, and let us break our chains. Because the bird born in a cage thinks that flying is an illness.
Thank you, guys, for that speech. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 27 seconds.
We would now like to call upon our next speaker, Ahmed Rafiq Chaudhary.
The topic I chose to speak on is to endure is greater than faith. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Respected judges, honorable president, esteemed faculty members and my fellow peers, the year is 1974. The 60,000 capacity stadium is crowded to its brim as George Foreman, one of the most dominating boxers of his time, thuds and stabs Muhammad Ali in the chest again and again. Ali bears the heavy onslaught. With every single hit and blow he faces, his time to fall comes nearer and nearer. Yet, he endured. Nearly 1400 years earlier, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his royal companions prayed for their souls. They prayed for their freedom against the perilous leaders of Mecca. Day after day, week after week, newly converted Muslims were subjected to torture, persecution. They were beaten, abused, and thrown, yet, ladies and gentlemen, they endured. Centuries later, a cold gust of wind flows through the high latitude area of Nepal, parching the throats and drying the hands of Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. The most hostile mountainous terrain crushed their bodies and withered their souls, yet they endured. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable President, it is through endurance that one triumphs. It is through endurance, through pushing against all the adversities, that one is able to conquer himself, and to ultimately achieve greatness. Whether it be Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, being recognized as one of the most influential people in history, or Muhammad Ali being successful in regaining the World Heavyweight Championship, or Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay becoming the first people to scale the monster that is Mount Everest, it was through endurance and struggle that they were able to achieve what they did. Honorable President, now let us try to understand the philosophy behind daring. Daring, as the name suggests, is an act of courage and bravery. It is an act that represents confidence and a strong mentality. It is an act that represents confidence and a strong mentality to achieve the extraordinary. For those who dare are indeed those who are motivated by a desire to achieve the unthinkable, motivated by a will to work miracles. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the intention of achieving greatness that propels people to dare and press forward. They wake up one day to face a challenge that propels them to dare. A challenge that propels them to dare. Yet, when they muster up their strength to face the challenge, and when they finally step forth in towards achieving their goal, do they realize their limitations? They look up and stare at the challenge, only realizing its extreme difficulty yet unable to grasp its complexity. Afraid from the monstrous task ahead, they give up, turn back, and leave. Some, Honorable President, stay, still not losing hope. They try their best, yet they fail. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable President, the reason for people who fail, even though they dare, is that they are not able to perform their best. They are not able to perform their best because when they confront the challenge or task ahead of them, human nature kicks in. Human nature kicks in. The switch of bravery in their head is turned off. Their minds shift from a state of fearlessness to a state of cowardice. Endurance, ladies and gentlemen, is something entirely different. When people are in a state of endurance, they are in a life or death situation. A situation so absolute yet treacherous that human nature once again kicks in and they are instinctively forced to bear. To bear the onslaught and torture that their body, mind and soul allow them to bear till death. To end, ladies and gentlemen, let it be known that do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Thank you.
Thank you for that, witness. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 54 seconds.
We would now like to call the next speaker, Sanjit Malik from Class H2A of Centenary House.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The year is 610 AD. The masses of Taif have immersed themselves in darkness, shackled by ignorance and arrogance, following rituals of those who had ruined themselves in the past. When the Prophet of Islam sees this, he takes the message of enlightenment to the people of Taif, but is pelted with stones in the sweltering heat of Arabia. Blood gushes from his feet, but the journey for these feet of his does not end. As he continues and becomes the shepherd to these wandering sheep, shows them the way, makes them move, spreading the message of truth and honesty as he goes. Mr. President, Honorable Judges, my fellow speakers, let us turn forward the clock now to 1994, the 27th of April. Mr. Nelson Mandela stands in his own country, South Africa, and is voting for the first time. As he presses the blue stamp onto the paper, he pulls out 1,000,000 votes of poverty-stricken, gaunt children from the jaws of slavery, genocide, apartheid, and racism, and leaves such an imprint on history that when people of color find themselves in despair to this day, they look towards this shining emblem within the timeline, seek inspiration to give the chains that hold them oh so tightly a small tug. Ladies and gentlemen, As times went on, paradigms changed. The way we eat, the way we dress, the way we speak changed. The intricate ways in which we tie our shoelaces, in fact, changed. But the interwoven iron links that tie us to our gruesome past and its ways do not seem to rust at all. And we seem to turn towards them, make them tie us down, and never learn from our mistakes. Why, Mr. President, I ask you, our education system, based on the one founded in 1837, to this day makes every man and woman, with every bit of sense and rationale, into a machine. I ask you, honorable judges, why do we tie a darkest of cloth on our eyes when our neighboring country of Afghanistan turns back 50 years in essence with the takeover of Taliban, as they point their guns towards Zainab and Fatima, as they make their way towards their places of education? Why do we not learn? Why do we turn a blind eye when hooligans take to the streets of Pakistan, chant slogans and incite violence, taking support from our sons, from our daughters, from the youth of this holy shrine that we hold in such high regard? Our holy land, Pakistan, when it turns into a relic of the Stone Age, as the hounds of injustice take to the streets and prey on the young, we in fact have failed to recognize, honorable judges, that we are slaves of the wrought iron chains that hold us down, and the times that are forgone. Why we sit silent, we fail ourselves, we fail our nations, we stutter and we stagger, as the Horn of Africa reeks of the young blood spirit in the name of terrorism. Mr. President, honorable judges, it's time we look back into the past. We look back to the times of 1940, when the Muslim community stood in unity, stood above, and finally broke free in 1947. Or as early as the 6th century BC, when Athens and its people shredded down the monarchy, took it down with their own hands, established democracy for the people, by the people, set it in stone. Why do we not learn from these examples of history and break free? In the timeless words of Jack London, to be liberated, honorable judges, my fellow speakers, you have to learn who has enslaved you. And when you are liberated as to who has enslaved you, learn further and break free. For one cannot enjoy the warmth of the sun, one cannot revolutionize the times of the stage. When he's chained, when he's shackled, one cannot truly enjoy the times of happiness and share sorrow when shackled and chained. Thank you.
For that speech, Hassan. The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 24 seconds.
We would now like to call the next speaker of the Malik Chiragh, Mia Gulsan Sikandar, of class H2G of Jubilee House. With the permission of the judges. Yeah.
Vanity. All is vanity. Today, let us speak upon the dignity and the birth of man, his preordained destiny, and his self-struggle to deprive himself of it. But first, let us speak upon life. Life, a moving, breathing entity, and to be favored by it, we must adopt to its principles and bear the free weight of movement. There is, I repeat it, a difference, and it is a good and not a bad action to mark broadly and clearly the line of separation between the two. For the want for improvement and growth is better than the contentment derived from from the idleness of the body and the mind. Disastrous are results of idleness. A man with an idle mind and a lethargic soul hampers the procession of mankind, born out of direction and purpose. They sit and watch with all the glory of their decaying depths, but are loath to contribute, indifferent to the age-long tradition of marching west forward. This is no source. This is no source. This is a mere warning, a caution, a low voice suggesting reason. Do you think they know that they are writing their own end? That history, proud and cold in essence, will leave them rot and be forgotten? That they are bound to a fate that will exile them from human memory? They do not. They do not. For those who do not move, do not notice their change. Their shadows are their well, and they grow in the darkness of their ignorance. Therefore, let us acknowledge that man is not made to be idle, and consider these observations. That a glimpse of the truth will reveal itself to one who carefully observes. And if one carefully observes, he will come to the conclusion that the state of movement is the state that one perpetually should be in. For it is within this very act that man gains a greater understanding of life, that man gains the liberty to define his destiny. It is within this very act that man strives to break free from the chains that tether him to the walls of fate as a submissive slave. Thus, let every lover of liberty, every patriot for progress, every well-wisher for his own posterity, swear by the blood of his ancestors to keep moving, to keep striving for change, for a greater outlook. For in the words of William Gibson, we see in order to move, and we move in order to see. In this style, we argue with the opposers of our philosophy, from the weak indolent king to the weak loafing beggar, all eager to crush the reason for movement. They don't know that it is humanity's struggle, that constant testing of the light, the shadow, the artificial, the natural, that allows us to learn from all dimensions of our surroundings. So let us shun and escape the temptation of the ease of monotony. Let us strive for change. Let us fight for freedom. Let us persist for progress. For it is within this very act, it is within this very embodiment of the principles of movement, for joining this procession of mankind, that we can rise from the dark and desolate valley in which we have placed ourselves. It is within this very act that we can do our duty to the society. It is within this very act that we can make real the very purpose of our promise. So, from today, let us shout from the podium, sing upon stages, and preach from the pulpit that man was made to be free, that we will fight to be free. God Almighty, give us the courage to be free. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 43 seconds.
We would now like to call upon our ninth speaker for today, Malik H2F Kajri House.
Those who do not move do not notice their change. 399 BC, an aging Socrates is forced to drink the hammer, for he has dared to question and inquire, offending those in power. 2,000 years later, in Rome, Galileo Galilei is placed under house arrest, for his work in astronomy has angered the clergy of the time. March 23rd, 1931, at the Lahore jail, Bhagat Singh, a son of the soil, is sentenced to the gallows, and he walks to his fate with manacles on his feet, but none on his soul. Yet the city of the hordes and deep slumber, no shackles in sight, but they are enslaved. Mr. President, honorable judges, in a world where most remain within their comfort zones, seldom experience true freedom. Only a handful that are able to come to grips with their barriers, and even fewer who break the shackles that once confined them. Shackles of society, shackles of science, shackles of gender, shackles of religion. It is one's own outlook which binds him to imprison himself within the petty conventions of behavior because of fear. Fear of society, fear of punishment. For the reasonable man, Mr. President, it is easier to adapt himself to the word, whereas in the words of George Bernard Shaw, the unreasonable man persists in trying to make the word adapt himself. The soil of this earth has been walked on by few unreasonable men, Mr. President. The revolutions that they brought ended years of ignominy. When reasonable men were subjected to the racist policies in South Africa, Nelson Mandela recognized the fetters of apartheid and violated them. When reasonable men believed that they lived in the miracle of science and technology over a century ago, the right brothers broke their shackles and pioneered their ground. When reasonable men deemed it radical for the world to revolve around the sun, Galileo's discovery paved the way for development and exploration in the world of science. It is because of these unreasonable men, Mr. President, that humanity has progressed since its inception. Had they listened to reason and remained stagnant, would the chains have clanged? Would they have moved? For it is movement that brings change, the strive for growth, the refusal to settle for complacency, the relentless desire to learn, unlearn, and relearn, which keeps this evolution alive, and each day posits an opportunity to break the chain. Martin Luther King Jr. once stated, Mr. President, from every mountainside, let freedom live. 399 BC, as Socrates drank the poison as if it were wine. 1642 AD, as Galileo succumbed to years of solitude. And 23rd March 1931, as Bhagat Singh, a son of the soil, marched towards the loose. Freedom did dream, Mr. President. Freedom did. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Zain. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 14 seconds.
We would now like to call the 10th speaker, Chiragh, Mohib Mujtaba Ahmed from H1J, Leslie Jones House.
With the permission of
My topic is those influences and non-conversation. Let's start. Respected audience, have you ever been a circus, a zoo, or any Southeast Asian country? Then you must have seen elephants do all the heavy work. You might have wondered, why doesn't the elephant just travel its owner, who's merely a fraction of its size? Let me tell you, when an elephant is born, it is tied to heavy chains. Initially, it does try to break free of them, but soon gives up. Over time, the owner needs only to replace the chains with a rope to keep the elephant in prison. Because, honorable judges, even though it is free of those shackles, its mind is still in chains. It is of little wonder why all the greatest minds of our history have propagated the virtues of the divine faith. Respected audience, we aren't sheep who are meant to blindly follow. Rosa Luxemburg, Maya Angelou, and Iqbal all have strived hard through their words and actions to make us realize that we are bound only to a situation by our own thought. George Bernard Shaw said that progress without change is impossible, and without change of mind, there is no change at all. It is only when one becomes mindfully present and starts to see the situation in an objective manner that they can truly comprehend the limitlessness of the powers. Even though the only thing permanent in life is change, we as humans have a natural tendency to resist it. We make the deepest, darkest dungeon our comfort zone, and breaking through it seems impossible. The most important thing for a human to realize is its potential, and they can do that by training their mind in a more positive and progressive manner. Because once the mind is set, the body follows naturally, and no obstacle can become a hindrance. I sincerely believe that a human is tied to the situation only by its own thought, and we can change that for the better by training our mind, by altering our thought process, and bringing ourselves into the field of action. Because if this wasn't true, honorable judges, we wouldn't have people like Chiragh, we wouldn't have Oprah Winfrey, or a very own Iqbal who strive hard for the world and show that lack of resources does not mean that you cannot gain success. Action at the right time is the key to propelling oneself further. We must think, strive, work hard, and achieve, and believe in oneself, because even the word impossible says, I am possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. The speakers spoke for 3 minutes each.
We now call upon the 11th speaker this afternoon, Ali Rashid, H2I, Lager House. With the
Seething. A man is seething as he is late to the masjid because the call for prayer is bad in his own country. A man is seething as his community's identity is continuously ignored despite representing a large proportion of the population. Anger, frustration, fury, helplessness all well up inside him. He wants to stand for equality, call out his oppressors, raise his voice, but then he stops. Every emotion stops at the tip of his tongue. This man, like the rest of his community, is bound by a vice that refuses to scream, clinging on to hopes of national reconciliation. It took 2 years of an oppressive and ethnically violent government for this man to realize that it's time to take his struggle beyond his conscience. And once that movement began, within 7 years the animation got his own. The example I take isn't of very far. I speak of our own sacred land. Those who do not move fail to recognize their changes. It may come as a surprise to even those of my peers that in the early 20th century it was a woman who dared to utter these words. It unfortunately won't come as big of a surprise that woman was assassinated. Assassinated for daring to be an anti-war pacifist in Nazi Germany. Assassinated for, as the words of her time had noted, teaching the poor what life is about, and so the rich have brought her out. Rosa Luxemburg may have died, but she left with us an important lesson. Freedom is always freedom of those who dare to think differently. Honorable judges, the time for thought is nigh. For too long did the Rosa Parks and Eleanor Roosevelts of every generation remain trapped to domestic confines because they thought the place for any woman who dare speak out was the state. For too long was the hammer and sickle and terror of the KGB the norm for Russia.
disorder can be order's greatest catalyst. The death of George Floyd was a travesty, but a travesty that encouraged movement in an entire community. A travesty which led the African American community to recognize the culturally integrated change which bound them. And once that movement started, once the Black Lives Matter movement reached its peak, even turning tables in the White House was no longer possible. And so, to every oppressed community and for every oppressed community around me, I urge one word: move. To the Uyghurs of Xinjiang facing forceful conversions, I urge: move. To the Palestinians of Sheikh Jarrah who are wrongfully convicted from their homes, I urge: move. To the people of Iraq, of Syria, of North Korea who have had their freedom of expression taken away from them, I urge: move. And most importantly, to the gentlemen of tomorrow sitting before me, we live in a time when political neglect and scandal media bias would lead us to believe that nothing can change. We are taught to accept our vices as norms and corruption as politics as usual. But if there is one thing that they do not teach, is that there is no steel more malleable than one we cannot see. Yet, I am optimistic. Because, and I'm sure my judges will agree with me, if there is one thing historians do not need to be taught how to do, is how to think differently from everyone else. And so, the path for your freedom is already set. I can see this road may be difficult. The metal that binds your wrist may create gashes in your skin, but it is only when you struggle against your chains that you will recognize them. And it is only when you recognize them that you will be able to break them. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Adit. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 46 seconds.
I would now like to call upon the last speaker this afternoon, Raja Ibn Said, H1F Jinaus.
The topic I will be speaking upon today is those who do not move, do not notice their changes. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, we are instructed a reality around us, a reality that pleases us, it hides all the ugly, a reality that is everything but real. Ever since the dawn of civilization, humanity's progress has been dependent on one thing and one thing only, and that has been to struggle. To not sit patiently with rose-tinted glasses while oppressive forces exercise free will. Perhaps the greatest sin one can commit is to be content with the status quo, to be complacent and live in a charade of obliviousness where instead of unshackling oneself, we paint the chains gold and call it a day. One cannot notice the fetters to prevent flight when one is pleased with the cage to imprison themselves in. Reference in Plato's traditional allegory of the cave, man is a slave, tethered to a wall, to an identity which does not benefit him, yet he cannot fathom anything better. History is witness to this, taking the examples of the civil rights movement in the 1950s or the black liberation movement in the 1970s. This was a wake-up call for people of color. People who thought their lives were no better than that of cotton fields or nursing the babies of the Caucasian masters while their very own children starved at home. Revolutionary figures like Angela Davis did what others were afraid to do. They shook things up. They rejected the status quo and taught the African American population the most basic thing. They taught them to dream. They taught them that eugenics, 400 years of slavery and colonization did not define them. Their future defined them. Their need to struggle defined them. All chains don't clank. Some are silent, invisible to the naked eye, but like a snake,
coil themselves around our minds, suffocating us with every passing minute. Prime victims of this phenomena are women. Our society, so delicately grafted by the brutish hands of the patriarchy, has subjected women to indoctrination. Personal revolutions are what is needed for progress, yet we remove the concept of personal from women. They are someone's daughter, someone's wife, or someone's mother. The individual is 6 feet under. Glorified domestic workers are created, taught to be silent in the name of duty. And in this very name of duty, 2.2 million women lose their lives in domestic violence each year. And what about us? Going deeper into the mindset of our very own nation, we have constructed a heteronormative nationalistic identity within Pakistan. A criteria for being a true Pakistani is. Yet we would inadvertently end up doing it, emphasizing and propagating these same archaic Victorian concepts which were shoved down our throats by our very own colonizers. We have made it our solemn duty to emphasize and propagate and raise our own culture, the culture of the soil that we walk on, and the language which runs through our veins, and cling on to Eurocentric ideas which are the very antithesis of what our ancestors fought for. Instead of carrying on the revolutionary torch, we are using it to set fire to our own identity. And all is done in the name of polite society. Linguistic and cultural repression are the hallmarks of this polite society. And ladies and gentlemen, who do you think is responsible for this? We are. I myself stand before you as an accomplice to this moral and social enslavement. As I have chosen silence and subservience, we as a nation have chosen silence and subservience, and that is the reason injustice goes unnoticed. However, I would like to end on a note of hope. Chains are never permanent. Chains have locks, and locks have keys. Our job is to find the key within ourselves, or better yet, become our very own locksmith. Thank you. Thank you for that speech, Raja. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 45 seconds.
We would like to thank all speakers for their contributions here today and request the audience to wait as the results are being tabulated. We would like to request one of our guest judges, Mr. Raphael, to address the audience and give his feedback on today's events.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. As a lawyer, I practice the dark arts of persuasion. And it's dangerous inviting me up to speak anyway, because as lawyers we tend to go on. And I'm sympathetic to judges in our courts, because while it's easy enough to speak for an hour, God bless anyone who has to hear this other nonsense that goes on. I'm sure I will speak for my brother judges when I say I was not for a second doubtful of the capacities of the gentleman who spoke today. It was fantastic speaking through it. I made a couple of points. It's remarkable that, I have been out of these halls for several decades now, but our heroes remain the same. I just wanted to point out, as much as we romanticize Bhagat Singh, and we do when we should, he didn't shoot someone, he shot someone. Lala Lajpat Rai was a Congress leader who was killed by a police lathi while he was protesting between the Punjab Assembly and the railway station, and then virtually died in his bones. But in response to that, Bhagat Singh took revenge against the police who he thought were responsible. Actually shot the wrong police officer. He didn't shoot someone, he shot the wrong person. Our heroes sometimes need so much to be desired. Colonialism, very important. Never forget that a bunch of Indian people, brown people, got English people out of this country in one of the most remarkable forms of political activism. Never forget that. It was the largest, most powerful imperial force force on the face of the earth. And granted, they lost World War II, but it was the civil disobedience of 2 decades and 3 decades that pushed them out. Perhaps the most successful form of activism in the 20th century. And lastly, taming elephants is actually quite nasty business. And with those words, I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for the fantastic job you did putting this together. It was very, very good. And I want to congratulate the staff at H.C. for doing a good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words, sir. Now we'd like to call our principal, Sir Michael Thompson, to speak about today's event.
I know something else hasn't changed in decades of the acoustics in this hall. I'm not sure I heard everything, but I thank you very much, Raphael, for your very eloquent address and your compliments to the boys. I know how much work they put into it and how challenging it is for a young man who's just starting out to piece together a coherent address in front of professional people and particularly old boys. That's quite a task indeed. I must thank Denise Ahmed for the work that she's put in. Just looking back to the judges, Maurice, thank you very much. Rahman and Rafa, thank you very much. It goes without saying that every time old boys turn up to an event, this is the occasion, and it makes it very special for us. So thank you very much for being here. I'm choosing to speech, I'm not. I just want to say that language is such an important thing, obviously, but it doesn't matter what language it is. But it's a reminder to us all boys how valuable it is in terms of not only discovering ourselves, but also obviously putting points of view. I've never been convinced easily by people who shout at me. I'm convinced by people who can become powerful. I think there's a slight difference. And again, I don't think the law necessarily helps to achieve that, or whether in fact you can even hear what I'm saying to you. But the performance today from all the boys, regardless of the result, congratulations, great courage. It's the same as only the backing of the MCG, it's a tough assignment.
So, to conclude, we would like to say that this event is only possible with the constant guidance and support of our principal, Sir Michael Thompson, our bursar, Mr. Khalid Dean, the headmistress of senior school, Madam Amna Kamran, the deputy headmaster, Sir Kamran, and the entire English department, and Ma'am Louisa in particular for organizing. Now the moment that you have all been waiting for, the results of this event, including who will land the Malik Chiragh Challenge Cup.
In joint third position, first we have Raja Abdul Saeed alongside Ryan bin Hassan.
In second place, we have Ali Rashid.
couldn't see it from there.
Good idea.
No, madam.
Principal, madam. Idhar side.
And the winner of the Malik Chiragh Challenge Cup 2021 is Malik.
I think all the winners, if they could come forward, I'll combine picture. Not,
Do you want to go to the Shamiana?
oh, we can do it outside.
We'll do it.
Let's do it outside. Snap?
Sir, yes please. Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.